Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. Do you still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not...
So here we are, a relatively immature species struggling with possible self-destruction. If aligning with the torus does hold the key to a new form of clean, safe energy access, imagine the implications. This could be the most important technology breakthrough of our times. So who wouldn't want to have an energy source that's unlimited and freely available? That turned out to be a key question, and that's what led me down the next rabbit hole. The torus is like the breath of the universe. It's the form that the flow of energy takes at every scale of existence. But there's also an underlying structure in how the flow fits together, sort of like a skeleton. It's called the vector equilibrium, a term coined by one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, Buckminster Fuller. Inspired by Fuller's visionary work, I spent decades researching the dynamics of the vector equilibrium and the torus. I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gatherings, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology. Given that so much of the suffering in our world is the result of lack of access to energy, I realized that free, unlimited, clean energy would be one of the greatest breakthroughs in history. It could not just improve, but actually transform the quality of life on this planet. It turns out that scientists as far back as the early 1900s have been developing alternative ways to access electricity without combustion. Nikola Tesla believed he had tapped into what he called radiant energy. Many scientists believe he was accessing what's now called free energy. But before Tesla could finish the project, his financier, banker J.P. Morgan, who had a monopoly on the copper used for electrical lines, recognized how Tesla's invention could transmit electricity without wires. He then shut down Tesla's funding. Tesla's lab was burned down and he was ostracized, all for trying to implement his vision of unlimited energy for everyone. A modern-day inventor, Adam Trombly, was inspired by Tesla's work and by the possibilities of the torus. Trombly built a dynamo, a direct current generator that accessed electrical power right out of the air.
We were trying to demonstrate that by mimicking the magnetic field of a planet and rotating this device, we could actually create a dynamo that would work. And in fact, it did work, and it does work. So when we contemplate nature, when we contemplate Jupiter, or we contemplate a dynamo like the Earth rotating in space, we're basically talking about a magnet which is rotating in space. And the lines of flux of the magnet are pouring down and through in this toroidal pattern of the magnetic field. It's also expanding, contracting. It's breathing. It's taking in the energy of space literally and transforming it. Right here in this toroid, we have enough energy to transform the entire Earth. And that's not just a theoretical statement, it's literally true. To contemplate the implications of this means that every single place on Earth suddenly has power. Every single person on Earth suddenly has power. We have universal abundance.
Trombley had been invited to demonstrate one of his generators at the United Nations and the U.S. Senate. But these events were undermined by the first Bush administration. Then the device itself was taken in a government raid. Trombley's experience isn't unique. Almost every time I found an inventor with a promising new technology in the field of free energy, he told a similar story of suppression. Inventor John Bedini began working with Tesla's theories of radiant energy decades ago and has produced an assortment of battery charging devices that generate more energy than it takes to run them. He announced that he was going to start offering them at low cost. Soon after that, he was attacked in his lab and warned not to produce the devices. For his own safety, he had to let go of marketing free energy. These are all devices from labs I personally visited.
Now.
Now, the quality of this footage is obviously poor, and I'm not expecting this to convince you. My point is that being there with these inventors, accompanied by experts, and seeing these new energy devices in operation convinced me that the technology is real. And the implications of that to me are absolutely thrilling. Canadian John Hutchison not only created some free energy batteries, but also used Tesla's theories to counter gravity, to make objects float. This could revolutionize the field of propulsion. His lab was raided and equipment was taken by police and government officials in 1978, 1989, and again in 2000. One of the scientists we were going to interview for this film was Dr. Eugene Malov, an engineer from MIT and Harvard, and editor of Infinite Energy magazine, which covers both theoretical and technological developments in the new energy field. Dr. Malov was mysteriously beaten to death in 2004. If these inventors were all hoaxers and charlatans, I wondered, why are they being suppressed so consistently and so brutally? I asked free energy inventor Adam Trombley why he thought this technology was being suppressed, and if the UFO phenomenon was related.
We've had major military people at great risk to themselves say, yes, these things are real. Why do you think the military-industrial complex doesn't want that statement to be made? Because you start thinking about what kind of technology is behind that. That's the bottom line. The suppression of UFO phenomena is hand in hand with the suppression of so-called free energy.
The energy is extracted from the fabric of the space around us, which means it cannot be metered. That is a direct threat to the single largest industry in the world, energy. It's goodbye ExxonMobil, goodbye oil, goodbye coal, goodbye linear transmission of electricity through power lines, all that gone. Unfortunately, it's someone's $200 trillion piggy bank. The proven oil and gas and coal reserves are worth north of $200 trillion. This information coming out would completely change geopolitical power more than anything since, well, in recorded human history. And it would happen in a generation.
I started to examine the breakthrough solutions, and much to my surprise, these concepts have been proven in hundreds of laboratories throughout the world, and yet they have not really seen the light of day.
Rather than smashing things together and trying to control the explosion, these new technologies rely on blending, of dancing with what naturally is. The common denominator of all the free energy devices I've seen is that they mimic in one way or another the torus energy shape. You don't have to believe in free energy technology to be concerned about the repression of ideas and inventions. I found myself thinking, what better way to justify our dependence on oil, coal, nuclear, and other dangerous and dirty technologies than to claim there are no better, cheaper alternatives?
Hello, I'm Diane Buckner. Welcome to the Dragon's Den, where cash-strapped entrepreneurs entice wealthy dragons to invest in their dreams. It's hard to keep up with Brett Wilson when he's not brokering $100 million deals. As chairman of Calgary's first energy capital, he's raising millions more for his favorite causes. Next in the den, Richard Willis with his innovative way of amping up electrical power. But for $1 million, will the Dragons pull the plug on his proposal?
Hello, Dragons. My name is Richard Willis. My company name is Magna Coaster. What I'm looking for is $1 million for 50% of the company.
Okay, so what do you do?
Basically, what I've done is I have a unit that takes in 18 watts of power and produces 50 kilowatts of power. What happened was I stumbled upon a multiplication factor where I can multiply not only the voltage, but also the amperage and the frequency of the power.
You're going to save the world.
I'm hoping to save the world.
We're so lucky.
Let's just demonstrate it. I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, so...
Richard says he's discovered a way to use magnetic power to produce massive amounts of electricity with zero emissions. If his claims are true, he could be sitting on an energy gold mine.
How'd you discover that? You just did it and then went, aha?
Just did it and went, aha. Actually, after I got electrocuted the second time, I called the University of Waterloo. We actually had them do some testing. And the first time out into Waterloo, I was 2,600% above unity. Over unity means you put less in and get more out. There's a zero mark.
Very simply, you're saying you're creating something from nothing. You're starting with a very low power source, and somehow, through the black box...
We have a patent pending on a design to take the power and inject it in between a set of magnets in a coil. And basically what happens is we feed it in at one speed. It bounces inside the coil and basically comes back out at a higher frequency, higher voltage, and higher amperage.
To counter the Dragon's doubts, Richard tries some corporate name dropping.
We've actually had Ontario Hydro approach us. We're working on a deal right now with the state of Michigan. We're also in talks with a major company from the U.S., Mercedes-Benz, talking with us right now. Some meetings with the local power company down in St. Catharines to help out Ontario by putting in power generation plants to try and balance the grid out.
Oh, you want to build the power plants?
Yeah, correct.
Brett Wilson isn't concerned about sales or royalties yet. He wants in on the technology, if it works.
I own a quarter of one of the largest independent power producers in Canada called Maximum Power. Little plug there. If this technology works, we'll do that deal. So long as the technology works, you've got the multiple of unity that you've described, you've got a deal.
Thank you.
I'll meet you halfway on that one. Look forward.
Thank you.
In Oklahoma, where oil has been king for over a century, inventor Troy Reed has been busy in his shop constructing rotating magnetic motors that he believes will soon revolutionize how we get around.
And it does work. This is a new prototype of the magnetic motor, and if I can explain a little bit about what you call a magnetic field. All magnets, the big old wooden prototype, has a system. As the motor went over, it had a tension to jerk over like that. If you take this motor here and you take your finger and rotate it, it doesn't have that jerking in it. So what I've done, I got rid of the crankshaft. I've got rid of the injectors, and the system in this motor here, as you crank this motor up, and like you do the other one, the motor will start running, and what I'll do, I'll energize it on this motor here,